Hey guys, Thomas the Silly Genie here, aka Mustached Tom, here to finally review Pokemon Detective Pikachu, another video game movie. And before I even begin, I'll say for later, I'm a little bit disappointed at one of the other reviews I've seen, one particular Angry Joe show. I think there was a little bit of bias on the Pokemon side there on that review. I'm just gonna say that now. Um, But, to be fair, I'll disclaimer this before I even begin. Yes, I am a bigger Digimon fan than a Pokemon fan, so if you want to take this review with a grain of salt, I would still understand. But I did used to watch Pokemon the show, and the only game I played was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and as on this channel you've seen me play Pokemon Sun and Moon. And as well as the other Pokemon Eevee, Let's Go Eevee. Those are the 3 Pokemon games I've done. So my knowledge of Pokemon games is a little bit more rusty. This is based on a video game, Detective Pikachu, so I'm not sure how faithful it is to the source material, so I'll be reviewing it just as a movie, and not letting the bias of it being called Pokemon get in my way of reviewing this fairly. With that being, we begin this movie following a young Tim, who doesn't seem all that keen on wanting a Pokemon, and his little friend at the beginning is trying to get him to scoop up a Cubone, and after a failed attempt, they flee the scene, and he's talking about like how he's gonna get promoted, and how he's just kind of doing his own thing, but then a roll-up of news happens, and he learns that his father has been in some sort of accident and was killed in the process. So he decides that he wants to go there and finish things and just sort of, I don't know, his motives seem the character's motives seem a little bit like unclearish. Like, he said like something about like, oh, I don't want to, like, I don't know, it's kind of unclear, to be honest. And I think that is one of the biggest flaws of the entire movie, is the characters. I think it's safe to say that even most of the people I've seen review this as well has said the actors don't really have the best material to work with. I think that is a safe thing to say without the whole bias thing coming out. So with that being said, he goes to his father's hotel, I guess, and he also meets this girl named Lucy. She's some sort of detective, or like a news reporter, I should say. Instant crush from him to her obviously happens immediately. She has a Psyduck, which comes into use later on in the movie. And they make their way after she does her whole bit about like, oh, I'm doing this report, I'm, like, fascinated, there's, like, stuff going on, learn more. So Tim decides to go up to the room where he hears some scuffling after a nap or whatever, I think that it is, and then afterwards, he eventually bumps, or sees Pikachu there, scuffling about. Pikachu is played by Ryan Reynolds, and I'm gonna say this now, save everyone some time. Ryan Reynolds is not a good voice actor. He's not a good voice actor. I don't think he does a very good Deadpool voice, and I don't think he does a very good Detective Pikachu voice either. I think he should get some voice acting lessons before he takes on any more CGI roles and ruins them. I mean, he's done it twice already, and in both instances, he has, I think I would say, objectively failed to be good at all. And again, the writing on the character himself, the character deals with amnesia, a few cliches here and there, and he as a detective does not do much detective work at all. It actually ends up leaning a lot more closer to Tim doing some of more of the detective work, at least that one scene in the movie. So I feel like even the title is deceptive. The bottom, the detective portion of the movie is completely kind of deceptive. And I think that is a disservice to the movie. Just because you have the name Pokemon and your beginning is filled with Pokemon, which some of them do look good, but that's not gonna get you much brownie points from me. I mean, I'll say they'll look nice, sure, whatever, but I mean, there are other ones that don't, so it's a bit hit and miss there. Anyways, he's not a very good voice actor, and I'll spoil something that happens later on. I suppose I'll say this is a spoiler review slash rant, if you will. They have, they have the scene in the trailer. This is actually in the trailers. The Pikachu, like, Tim is like talking to people, like, "Hey, look at this Pikachu! He's talking, isn't he?" And then the girl says, like, "Oh, look at that Pikachu!" And then you hear the voice of the normal Pikachu. I'm like, why didn't you just switch the father into the mother and have the person who does the normal Pikachu voice just do the voice of Pikachu? You would have saved so much. Just so much better voice acting probably would have came from her. Who cares if Detective Pikachu would sound a little bit more feminine? That's kind of what he would sound like anyways, I would assume, since that's what he sounds like when he's always going, Pikachu! I can't do the voice, I can't go as high-pitched as that, but at least I tried, which is something Ryan Reynolds can't seem to do at all. Even when he's scared in the arena later on, and he does like his little pretend Pikachu, or I think he just says Pika or whatever, and it still doesn't even sound even remotely close. So again, I would say Ryan Reynolds needs to learn how to voice act. I mean, I would also learn how to do better voice acting if that's the closest I can get to doing a Pikachu right now, but then again, my voice is a little bit, sore from doing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, but whatever. At any rate, so they team up, eventually. Pikachu's trying to find the father. He shows Tim the hat, which shows that the hat's from the dad. But Tim's very reluctant to even be a Pokemon trainer. There are flashbacks of how he lost his mom previously, and again, I strongly think it should have been the role reversal. I think that it should have been the dad who already passed away, and he's looking for his mom, and then just have the person who does the Pikachu voice normally just do the voice. It's such a no-brainer. And I am a little bit curious as to, I'll just say this now, they do an after credit, or they credit like one of those special ending credits thing, not like an after credits thing, but like an ending credits where it's like it shows everything that's and it shows everything animated. I'm like, so you could have just made the whole movie animated then, right? I mean, I guess if you want to do the whole live action CGI thing, that's fine. But you could have gone all animated? Uh, okay. Why didn't we get that then? I would at least want an explanation. I don't know, it just seems like that would have worked a little bit better in terms of some of the other Pokemon designs. Because you could have just used the actual designs from Pokemon. Problem solved on that front. But again, I get it. Some of the designs still do look cute. I get it. At least those designs. Again, it's a bit half and half. So yeah, they team up. They eventually bump back into Lucy after dealing with some. They find this vial. It's called vial. I'll just say it's vial R. I think that's what they call it, like R something. Which it releases into the air, which is apparently how Tim is able to understand Pikachu in the first place. Which doesn't make sense later on, by the way. And I'll get to that. So, yeah, this causes some other Pokemon, primarily these monkey-like Pokemon, I forget what their names are, but they sort of go wild. This sort of R virus causes them to go wild. But it does seem to be temporary as they sort of flee from the scene. They're both outside, and then they're sort of walking, and then that's where you see the whole Pika Pika thing for the first time. So Tim's trying to figure out what to do. He's like talking, or more so arguing with Pikachu there. They end up like in a bar-like setting at some point. Still sort of trying to figure all this out. So I think at that point they say like, oh, Lucy might be like our first lead in, like he mentions her. So we get a little news report as we're sort of transitioning about like Pokemon, like what the city is like, how the city has transitioned. I think this happened sooner, but I don't have my notes on me. I'm trying to remember everything off the top of my head, because every time I have my notes, it causes lag on my recording. By the way, I'll say this now, if you want to support me so I can get a second laptop to prevent that from happening, then check out the links in the description. That will send you over to my Patreon page, and any donations will go towards that directly, to make my reviews much better, and not be a jumbled mess like this is. But anyways, they do eventually find her, and we meet our pretty obvious bad guys, the owner of the city, I suppose, and his son. We see a pretty early on spat about how they argue about stuff, and it's pretty obvious that they are in some way responsible for what's going on. So he talks with her a little bit in her quote-unquote office. Psyduck's like freaking out and stuff, and then there's like a little bit of stuff with that. So she happens to have gotten vials of more R stuff somehow. And this eventually leads them down a road where they're trying to figure out more stuff. and they're bumbling around. They bump into Mr. Mime. I think this is the next thing that happens. Another scene from the movie where Tim is doing more detective work than Detective Pikachu. He's able to figure out what Mr. Mime is saying at all times. I guess he's just good at mimicry somehow. I don't know. Just to move the plot along, I suppose. So he's able to figure it out. So they lead to more R virus stuff in this secret Pokemon arena, which is also in the trailer, where we see Pikachu square off against a Charizard, and they do it to get more information. Pikachu's having strugglings as he's again dealing with the whole amnesia thing still. So this is also to excuse him not having to do electric moves until the very end of the movie, and to sort of give him more of a dilemma while also fighting this Charizard. So the battle's pretty good, all things considered. The battle beforehand was not as good. I believe the two that were fighting were Gengar, or is it Gengar? I think it's Gengar, and I think its name is like Ward. It's like some sort of. It evolves from Squirtle. I know that it's like the double evolved form of Squirtle. I forget his name exactly off the top of my head, but yeah, it doesn't look as good. So anyways, the Charizard and Pikachu square off. Pikachu's like fleeing all over the place. Charizard's given that R stuff. And eventually at some point, Tim gets involved into the match as well. So everyone's flailing about. The other trainer guy also gets involved and brings in more of that R virus stuff, in which more of the Pokemon and people are in the vicinity. So it can't possibly be that the virus was causing Tim to understand Detective Pikachu, because all of these people were in the vicinity when they were hit by this R virus stuff, and they couldn't instantly understand their Pokemon afterwards. So that already shit the bed on that excuse. So he just has the power to understand his Pikachu somehow. There really isn't any clear explanation. It's never really given. So yeah, that sort of shit the bed immediately. And so they get arrested, and Tim and Pikachu do. Everyone else, I guess, happens to somehow manage to leave the scene just fine. So he goes to this cop detective. I think his name is Yamada. I think that's his name. Who he spoke to earlier. I forgot to mention this happened. It's a pretty brief scene about him learning about how his father passed away, or supposedly passed away. So he's like now convinced, and he's trying to convince Yamada about the whole thing. You know, he managed to do that. So I think he gives them a new lead, or they go. I think that at this point they go back to Lucy. I think. Forget. I think. Oh, sorry, I also forgot at the beginning. We also see right off of the bat, we already see Mewtwo at the very beginning of the movie, which is a big connecting factor into all of this, by the way. So that happens. I forget if anything else happens. happens in terms of right after. Um, yeah, I'm completely blanking on the next part, but eventually um, he does end up teaming up with Lucy again to go to the secret facility that she found out somehow. It's pretty convenient, all things considered. They're looking around. The movie slows down finally in terms of pace. Um, she sort of gets. They sort of separate from each other. I forget if that was also kind of convenient, but so they get a whole lot of exposition via these sort of holograms of the past about like how Mewtwo was created, how Mewtwo escaped with the help of Pikachu, how the father was involved, and again, it's all pretty given pretty heavily. It goes on for a bit here. Um, and again, I've always been a prioritizer of it's fine to have some exposition, but it is a little bit hard when you go on for a little bit too long. And I do feel like it does sort of get really close to hitting the mark of being too long here. Especially with all the conveniences beforehand and leading up to and during. Like, it only felt like they reached one clue and then everything else was sort of handed to them afterwards. And that doesn't feel like a very detective thing to me. I suppose the Mr. Mime thing's like the second closest thing it gets to being a detective movie, but again, that does fall a lot more on Tim than it does on actually Pikachu, which, again, the name, I don't know, it kind of implies that it's supposed to be the other way around, but whatever. Anyways, stuff goes off, they press some buttons, learn the infos, start to head back. They were also being watched the entire time from their entrance to now. So the son is who has the glasses on, which is very important for later. Sees this, presses a button, releases, I believe the Pokemon is Greninja, a set of them, and then when Tim and Pikachu get back, they help out the other two from their little captor. They flee the scene, end up in they end up outside in the forest. They end up like seeing like they have Psyduck do his move, in which causes the Greninja to be sent flying back, but then the Earth appears to be moving, quote unquote. I'll save you the details and just say it's a giant Pokemon. I forget what the Pokemon's name actually is, but whatever. So they're splitting apart the lands, or land masses that they happen to be made up of. Tim does a huge jump from one side to the other, getting to, because he's separated from Lucy, he gets back onto her side. In the process of trying to flee, this huge rock starts to pummel down toward Pikachu. They're separated somehow, and it's cut really bizarrely where it shows a huge rock, and then when it cuts back to Pikachu, it actually looks like he was hit by nothing. Unless I missed it, unless it was a really small rock, like, man, it almost looked like he wasn't hit by anything, but he still goes down? Like, what? It's kind of pathetic. He kind of goes down like nothing. I forgot if the Greninja even hit him either. I don't know. I don't think they did. So he gets taken out by a rock, or an invisible rock. I don't know. Um, and that KOs him, I guess. Man, Pikachu's kind of lame if a rock can take him out. Um, and I know that is not very akin to current Pikachu in anime, because, yeah. Tim's freaking out because now he's suddenly like, no, you're my Pokemon, you're my partner, oh, jeez. Um, so he sees a Bulbasaur, uh, and it looks, like the one you see in the commercial. So he's led eventually by a bunch of Bulbasaurs um, to this area where they bump back into Mewtwo. Mewtwo lifts up Pikachu a little bit, heals him, and then gives him back some of his memory, question mark, or all of it. Or some of it. I'm assuming it must be some of it. So he's given back his memory, or again, some of it. He's also healed. They learn that Mewtwo was actually on his side, and the father could have been like doing stuff. Tim's a little bit upset, but Pikachu remembers like how destructive he was in the process of doing that. So now we have to come to the obvious low point of the movie where like Pikachu's like, oh, I can't be with you. I can't do this. I'm gonna sing the Pokemon theme song all sad and alone. Oh no. Tim ended up, I think he like, I don't know what he did. Was he with? I think he was with Lucy, or ended up back with Lucy at some point. Because the Bulbasaur were like, no, we're gonna deny Lucy progress, I guess. So yeah, he like does his own thing. They're separated for a bit. So I'll talk about Pikachu first. Pikachu ends up on this bridge where he ends up back in the initial crash site. He remembers more of what happened and is taught more of what happened due to Mewtwo teaching him about how the father died, but then his body got transferred into Pikachu. I mean, he learns as much as the first little part, but the second little part comes a little bit later. So he's like, oh! And then we cut back to Tim, who at this point I'll just say is with Lucy, I think. They are seeing this little like festival this little thing is happening. There's like news happening, and he's like trying to get her to like be like, oh, this is what's going on, what's really going down. She gets denied initial access. Meanwhile, Tim goes to see that father character who you kind of assumed was the evil character, and he ends up being the evil character. Ooh, shocker. And the person with the glasses who we see throughout the movie, whether it was the son or some woman with shades, it ends up being a Pokemon. It ends up being a Ditto, who has the ability to transform into humans, Pokemon, all that sorts of jazz. So, is it implied that Ditto was the Cubone at the beginning? Because he happens to turn into a Cubone at some point. in the fray of their little scuffle, while the president does his mind transfer thing into Mewtwo. It looks pretty bad, all things considered. So the guy can talk as Mewtwo now. He's in the mind of Mewtwo. He's controlling Mewtwo, all that sort of stuff. And his plan is to use our virus stuff to make all the Pokemon wild, transfer all of them into all the humans into Pokemon, and then do something? Like, he just wanted to evolutionize humans by turning them into Pokemon? Yeah, I'm gonna say his plan's pretty dumb. I don't get what would have been achieved by turning people into Pokemon exactly. But again, this is another instance of people being blasted more by the R gas, and then the Mewtwo slash President Mewtwo, there we go, is like blasting people into their Pokemon. So everyone's getting fused. Lucy gets fused into Psyduck temporarily. Pikachu at this point makes his way back. He somehow finds everyone, by the way. I'm not even sure how he ended up back there, so another convenience. He ends up like talking to Lucy slash Psyduck and is able to understand him. So does that mean that Lucy would understand that Pikachu can talk now? Again, the movie makes no sense in this regard. The rules are never established clearly in a clear, concise way, ever. There's not enough detective work. Pikachu's voice is constantly just not good. The acting is not good. I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. If the last lot of minutes haven't been made crystal clear. So anyways, Pikachu ends up back. Ends up helping Tim there on the outside by going after Mewtwo, President Mewtwo. I'll just call him that from the time being. Meanwhile, Tim is dealing with Ditto doing his shtick, which is preventing him from getting the little Cerebro thing that is making this all possible. So Detective Pikachu at this point remembers everything conveniently. Is able to use his moves. Does one move, like an electric charge. Is like attacking President Mewtwo on all these blimps. As this little festival's like going into its climax. Detective Pikachu's like bumbling around, trying to just stick around, and then Mewtwo's like, "Oh, you can never defeat me," and then he's like, Detective Pikachu does the, "Oh, I didn't have to, I just had to distract you," which is, I think, is becoming a little bit more of a cliche now. I've seen this happen a few other times in a few other movies where it's like, I didn't have to do anything, this actual thing is happening over here. It's definitely becoming more of a trope at this point. It's been kind of becoming more and more obvious. I think this is the biggest it's ever been in terms of that. It's like the most obvious, like, oh, it's actually this thing over here that's happening. And of course, Tim, after like blasting Ditto with the art juice or whatever, takes off the helmet, which causes Mewtwo to return to normal. Mewtwo is able to undo everything by himself, remove all the gas as well. Tim reunites with Pikachu. They have their little moment, and Lucy's also back to normal as well. Mewtwo goes to them, and he explains the whole father thing, which also kind of doesn't really make any sense at all. And he's like, I'll let you meet with your real dad, even though he died and his body was left there in the car. I somehow suspended his life and body question mark, but I hid his body, and then I brought it back, and then I gave you the real dad and separated it from the Pikachu. So all of that happens, and it turns out that Ryan Reynolds also plays the dad as the actual, it's actually Ryan Reynolds playing the dad, which again, could have just switched it to being the mom. Again, just could have saved a lot of time, probably even some money if Ryan Reynolds is, expensive. I'm just saying, you could have saved some money. You didn't need Ryan Reynolds to cash grab. Your movie's called Pokemon. Detective Pikachu. It has both Pokemon and Pikachu in the title. You did not need Ryan Reynolds for this movie to work. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be honest with you here. So yes, you hear the normal Pikachu voice, which again, I'm so annoyed by that they just didn't make it the mother, as I keep saying. So Tim decides that he's gonna stay with his dad and that normal Pikachu. They go off into the sunset, and that was Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Another bad video game movie. Is it embarrassing to say that I still think the best video game movie is Silent Hill? Silent Hill. That movie came out in 2003, I want to say. I think around that time, or maybe a little bit later, probably 2005 or something like that. But still, that is still a decade, and we still haven't got a good video game movie. What the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? I'm sorry, I might have not have played the video game itself, but this movie, even on its own, it's still not even good. Sure, some of the Pokemon look fine in CGI. Fine. Whatever. That doesn't interest me as much as the other part of the movie, Detective Pikachu, which the detective part, throw that out the window, because that's not even good. Pikachu's not very convincing being played by Ryan Reynolds at any point of the movie. The other actors, the main Tim guy, he's at best. Lucy keeps getting shoehorned into some scenes and then getting left behind in others, so I think they didn't really know what to do with her fully, question mark. And there are a lot of parts of this movie that don't make sense, don't add up. There's not a lot of detective work. It is kind of a mess, to be honest. And here it is. I feel bad that some people actually thought this movie was good. I feel bad for Angry Joe that he felt the need to do a bump to 6 out of 10. This is not a 6 out of 10. Oof, it is not. It is not that. Not even close. This is not a halfway decent movie. Not even half. Oof. This is not a good movie. CGI can only bring you so far. That's the brutal honesty of everything. Again, the end credits show the animated style of all of the characters. You could have made the whole thing animated and it still would have been the same schlocky mess. But hey, at least all the Pokemon would have looked like themselves. I don't know, potential, like, win in that department, I suppose, but, you know, I wanted this to succeed for the fans of Pokemon. I used to be a former Pokemon fan. I get it. Um, hell, I've been clamoring for a I've been clamoring for a live action Digimon movie. I'm not even gonna hide that fact. I've been saying that for a while now. I've seen a fan film, and I actually supported it at some point. Live action fan Digimon movie. The effects were not as great, but it was okay. But I do love supporting lower, like these like fan people from time to time if I can. It's definitely been a lot harder to do recently, with not having a job. So yeah, I get it. I get that I get that I do have my own need to see what Digimon would look as a live action CGI movie, and I get why they went live action here. There's definitely a certain appeal to live action people interacting with a lot of cute Pokemon. There is an appeal to that. I get it. Yeah, I'll say if the CGI team from here, this exact CGI team, found a better director, found better actors, and then said we want to work on Digimon, I'd be like, yeah, give that movie to me, because I'm ready. I mean, you would have to probably make the story a lot better, because let's lay out the cards. Digimon has always been better at being an animated story than Pokemon. It's been kind of established even by a lot of Pokemon fans. They'll be like, yeah, it's kind of been the same, on its scale. It's been for kids or for kids. I'm gonna put that in quotes because that is such bullshit. I've never liked that excuse ever. I don't like using it myself. I don't think that is fair to say at all. I don't think that pays credence to anything, honestly. Some of the best movies of all time are, quote, for kids, so let's not beat around the bush and say that that's even a good excuse, because it's not. Even still, I would still expect a better story from Digimon. I would be a lot harder, a lot angrier if this was the story turned out by a Digimon movie, because the Digimon storyline, in terms of, being an arc, has a lot more going on, in terms of character development, in terms of voice acting. You'd probably want to get someone who can actually do a good Agumon voice. I mean, mine's a little wonky. The best I can do is Agumon. Right now, with my current voice, I could probably sound a little bit closer to Gabumon. Gabumon. It's a little bit there right now. But you probably still want to get someone who can do that and is also somehow also more popular. Kinda, I know. I'm saying that, and they got Ryan Reynolds, who can't do Pikachu, for crying out loud. And I would expect more from a Digimon movie. I'm just gonna say it. I would definitely expect a lot more from a Digimon movie, but this is Pokemon. It's a different beast. But even still, I was expecting the detective part to shine through, which is why I'm still kind of disappointed. It seemed like that should have been the crux of this movie, and it ended up not even being a good detective movie. And yeah, again, just hearing Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu, it's very distracting. It doesn't sound good at all. Two portions of this movie, woof. And the only thing at the top, Pokemon. Again, the cute ones look cute. Eevee looks cute. Charizard looks cute. Bulbasaur looks cute. Those are the three. Pikachu, sure, it looks cute. It doesn't sound good, but it looks cute. Those are the four that I would immediately say are the... if I didn't mention Eevee, then Eevee. Yep, absolutely. Those were probably the cutest of them all, but the others, not as much. So yeah, I would give this movie, if I were giving it a fair score, I would go low, an honest low. I would give it a 3 out of 10. That is a lot closer to what this movie should actually be scored as, honestly. And I think most of those points, I'm giving out of the CGI and the slight acting hurdle jump of the main actor. Like, there was one point where I was starting to go, okay, you're not doing terribly, but you're not doing great either. You're just kind of getting there to doing kind of from mediocre to okay. Like, you're kind of in that range right now. But all the other parts of the movie, no, you're not doing it as good as that one scene. So, yeah, I definitely give this movie a 3 out of 10. It made a whole bundle of money, so I'm not even gonna pretend like that I'm surprised by that. It's called Pokemon Detective Pikachu. I mean, a lot of Pokemon fans went to go see this movie, and I would understand if they fell in love with it because they were overwhelmed by Pokemon. But again, I was expecting a little bit more from a movie called Pokemon Detective Pikachu. At least in terms of the detective part and a better Pikachu. Again, that's right on the poster. I expect if you're gonna name your movie Pokemon Detective Pikachu, and Detective Pikachu is a part of the slogan, you kinda have to hit those parts home. You kinda have to. Otherwise, you kinda disappoint on the most basic regard. So again, a 3 out of 10. I get why a lot of Pokemon fans went to go see it. I hope that if a Digimon live-action movie is ever announced, that it does not get this treatment in terms of storytelling. CGI, sure, do that. I'm sure it'll look just as great. Get the same CGI, again, just do exactly what I said. Same CGI team, or maybe a better CGI team, or just, get a little bit improvement on that regard too, on some of the designs. Find a better director, a better writer, better actors, and you got yourself a solid potential lineup there for a Digimon movie right there. So yeah, 3 out of 10. If you enjoyed this long review, pretty long at this point, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page, as I mentioned earlier. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.